So, allowing users how little to pay is not the secret. The secret is allowing people to spend a shed load, but hardly any of them. So we knew that 95% of users played the game for free, 5% paid something. That's what we kind of knew. What we've now seen, and we now learn, and some of this is through a bunch of companies coming to the market or going to due diligence or other stuff, and me moving in indiscreet worlds of investment bankers and venture capitalists, 80 to 90% of the revenue for free-to-play companies comes from 0.5% of users. To put that really into context, there's a games company with over 100 million registered users who makes over 80% of its revenue from under 25,000 people. 100 million users, 25,000 people are their customers. There's a newspaper-related gambling site, makes $1 million revenues in a year. They have 2 customers who matter, just 2. That power law, and we'll talk a little bit more about power laws, that power law is an amazing new kind of thing. How does that work? Because these people are spending a stupid amount of money. I'll talk a little bit about the ethics of that, because that was addressed yesterday. But spending $50 on the lifetime of a free-to-play game, if you played Modern Warfare, if you only played Modern Warfare, you just spent 50, 60, however much dollars on that, depending on how you discounted, whether or not you bought the night vision goggles. But you also have to bear in mind you had to buy a PS2. Sorry, you didn't have to buy a PS3. You have to buy an expensive piece of kit with an expensive plasma screen, with a HDMI cable and extra controllers, and all that other stuff. You're spending more than $50 on your experience of that. So actually that seems perfectly fair. There's a company in Russia, I've only been told this one, I meant to check it up, whose business model is that it's a medieval free-to-play game. They sell Kevlar armour, obviously deeply anachronistic. They sell 1 a month for $50,000. And that's their business model. That's all they sell. Everything else you can earn in the game, that you can't. And they sell 1 every month. $300,000 a year from that kind of thing. They understand the price-demand curve. They really understand the price-demand curve. So they're spending this kind of stuff. So the really, really stupid thing is the games industry knew this all along. I was really hoping somebody would quote the fact that 80% of gamers only see the first 10 hours. Somebody did, I think it was Chris. A forum community is a small proportion. The people who are deeply committed to your game are the power law users. Measure that in terms of time. If any of you run games here and have any sort of analytics, go back and chart how much time people spend in your game. I promise you it will follow a power law distribution, not a normal distribution. You won't have a few people spending a little, a few people spending a lot, and everybody kind of in the middle in that normal Gaussian curve, if you remember any maths. It's going to be power law. It kind of just is. And read a book by Clay Shirky called Here Comes Everybody, which is an amazing book on how the internet is changing our sense of power laws. We knew it for time. We didn't make the obvious leap that maybe it was also true for money. Free-to-play let us realise this. Here's an indie example. People ask me what game I play. I have a young son as well as another on the way, so I play much less games than I used to. And this game, which basically has 1,000 people in the world who play it, is absorbing all of my time. But because there's so few of us, I know the developer well, so I can get data from him, which I can't always get from big publishers. So this isn't a perfect power law, because it's actually more spread out. The game, to those who care, is based on a tabletop 1980s game called Car Wars from Steve Jackson Games. It's about guns and cars in a tactical environment. If you liked Car Wars, it's fantastic. If you didn't, you'll go, what the bloody hell is this about? You'll never get into it. It's needlessly spreadsheety complicated, and it's wonderful. Over on the left is how many events people have participated in. That's the chart. Most people, the modal thing is they've played it once. There'll be people who are trialists who didn't like Car Wars. The mean, 107, but that's deeply skewed by the handful of people who are playing more than 400 events. Given that an event takes anything between 15 minutes and 4 hours, they're playing a lot of this game, a huge amount of this game. Now, the way they monetize this game is through subscriptions, which means that this person is paying the same amount of money as this person. In the ethics debate, which do you think is more fair? To spend lots of money persuading somebody to spend $40 on something they put in their drive, play for 20 minutes and go, this is shit, why did I waste my money? Or give people a huge amount of opportunity to play the game for free forever, and if they really like them, allow them to spend $400 or $500 on it over their lifetime. If you've been in Warcraft since day one, I meant to do the maths, there's lots of things I meant to do, over $500 of revenue you spent on kind of Warcraft. It's not as if this model's new, and that's just in subscriptions. So that's an indie example, and Sam now owes me a year's subscription for Darkwind, particularly if any of you sign up. So, how do you identify? I called it whales, you might call them high rollers or power users or true fans, we've seen this phrase, who will spend lots of money. This is from Social Gold. Social Gold is owned by Jamble. Jamble was bought by Google for about $70 million last month, or maybe earlier this month. This was a presentation they gave at the Virtual Goods Forum, which I stole shamelessly, which is why I had to give them a plug. That's the highest spender by continent, as it were. $11,000 in the UK, $25,000 in Saudi Arabia, a couple of people in the $10,000 to $20,000 in the US and Canada. They don't have very much activity in Russia. Russia is where this stuff goes properly insane, and people spend huge amounts of money on individual stuff. Just to be clear, whales don't have to be that big. This is their definition. They call them kings, lords, knights. I'm going to call them whales, but I might slip into kings and power rollers and high users. This is their definition. Hardcore users whose lifetime value is $1,000. Somebody who's been subscribing to Warcraft since the beginning would be one of those. Loyal repeat users, they keep spending stuff. Their lifetime value, $250. First month purchases, that's probably me. If I like a game, I buy a few bits and pieces, $40, $50. That, knights, are spending the same amount on a free-to-play game as somebody would spend on a box product. One-time purchases, they spend something. The free players, the peasants, have a lifetime value of 0 in revenue sense. I think they are incredibly valuable people, and we'll talk about why. This now turns into a maths spreadsheet, which is my kind of thing. You start going, okay, how do I get people through the door cheaply? They're peasants, they have a lifetime value of 0. Well, when everybody comes through the door, you have no idea which of these they are. So everybody starts out as a peasant in terms of how you treat them. So you want to get customers as cheaply as possible. You then want to start funneling them, trying to identify who they are, trying to offer them, and this is the really, really important bit. If you only offer people the chance of spending nothing or a $10 subscription, they can only ever become commoners. That's it. They might be somebody who's happy to spend $50,000 with you. You'll never know because you didn't let them. You need to have ways of enabling people to buy this stuff. I use the word enabling. There are other people convincing, conning, conniving, finagling people into doing this stuff. All of those are true. Some people do that stuff. I don't think you should. I don't think you need to. I think what you need to do is allow the people who love your game so much the opportunity to spend the money they want to spend on you. That's a really, really important distinction. There will be companies who get us as an industry into trouble, Ebony, through making people do stuff without really telling them what's kind of going on. I'm now going to be sued in Australia. I'm really, really regretting that. Those people would happily, these fans he's got, would clearly spend tens of dollars. He has no mechanism of doing it. This is why NG Moko has gone free to play with open-ended gameplay, because they've understood the power law rather than the old box product kind of mentality. I promise you I'll get off games eventually. Focus on the whales. Kerry Packer, the late Kerry Packer, my favourite gambling story, sitting in a casino in Vegas. He, a Texan oil millionaire, and I said, "Hi, I'm Bob, I'm worth 60 million. And Kerry Packer very slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out a quarter and said, "I'll flip you for it." Which is just, it is fantastic. It was deeply unfair. He was worth $6.5 billion at the time, but nevertheless, it was my favourite gambling story. That's a hedge fund manager, that's Prince Jeffrey of Brunei. Hollywood Vegas has long understood the value of the whales. It comps them, it treats them, it identifies them, it helps them out. We don't. We treat all of our customers as equal. This is going to be the undoing of all media businesses. Telly, records, film, games. If we treat all of our customers as equal, the internet has eroded the power which you used to have by the difficulty of distribution. You'll charge them all the same amount of price. A whole bunch of people go, "I don't want that, I'll just pirate it." A bunch of true fans will only pay the amount you let them, the small amount, and you will go bust. You have to find a way to make money from whales. The good news is I have one. Firstly, big mythbuster, people will pay for content. This is, broadly speaking, not true. This chart is biased. I will put this up front. Console gamers are the most likely group of people to pay for content. This chart comes from PlaySpan, who provide virtual currency in hundreds of games, but they're all free-to-play, browser-based, those kind of things. So it's a biased chart. I'm going to say that up front. I'm going to ignore, for this purpose, everybody always looks at the ups and downs. I'm only going to look at this row of numbers. 73% of people buy in-game currency with their currency. Kind of who cares? That's saying like Heathrow sells more dollars than anything else. It doesn't give us any insight. Similarly, subscription codes don't count. They're just using in-game currency to buy subscriptions. They're a subscription business. The other 5, weapons, wearables, power-ups, virtual gifts, and maps and levels, are useful data points. Fewer people buy maps and levels than anything else. They spend less on them, and only 17% of them kind of do it. There's not many transactions, not very much money, small penetration. People who play games free to play do not want to pay for content. For developers who are used to pricing stuff in terms of man hours, this is really, really hard. The big example which sort of swept the West, meaning the story swept the business conference circuit, was Kart Rider, a Korean game which somebody has told me, and I don't believe that 98% of all Koreans have played at least once. It's basically a Mario Kart rip-off on the web. They created a Santa hat in the run-up to Christmas 2007, which they sold for $2. And they sold 1 million of them in a week. And that is their business model. And developers in the room are kind of going, man hours, okay, so that's 20 minutes. And he made $2 million, lucky bastards. They spent a year building a brilliant Mario Kart game, which 98% of Koreans had played for free. That's what they gave away. That, in essence, was their marketing spend. And then they made stuff that, and I'm trying to remember whether or not this slide comes up, so I'll do it now anyway. They made stuff that did something different. It engendered emotions in people. People weren't buying the Santa hat to own a Santa hat. I mean, why would you do that? What they were doing was they were paying $2 to feel Christmassy. I don't know about you, but I pay a lot more than $2 to feel Christmassy every year. They were paying $2 to be the first person to have a Santa hat. That didn't last, but you could say you were the first person. They were paying to stand out. They were then paying to fit in. He's got a Santa hat. I want a Santa hat. Let's all have Santa hats. They were building emotions, that Christmassy stuff, that fitting in stuff, all of that stuff. That is stuff which is deeply worth $2. And even better than that, it's not something like a reindeer ears you buy in the real world, which is in the cupboard and you wake up slightly hungover and go, why have I got reindeer ears which cost me $5? You don't do that, because actually you just stop wearing it, it passes, it's ephemeral. It was worth it for the 2-minute moment. That, in my mind, comes under weapons and virtual goods. Wearables and virtual goods. Those stuff are about status and emotions and feelings. Weapons and power-ups, deeply controversial in the Anglo-Saxon, not even the Anglo-Saxon, but in the US and the UK. Deeply controversial that you can buy advantage in an online game. Asia, yeah, fine. Germany, actually, they're getting pretty used to it. The UK and the US loathe it. Personally, I think that it is deeply unfair that people who are unemployed, living on the state, and can dedicate 60 hours a day to playing Counter-Strike are allowed to beat me just because they're better. I'd happily use my money to be able to be better than them. You can pick your argument as to where you want that to sit. But there is an argument that there's a rebalancing going on. Now that's obviously a deep not ethical question, but a practical question about how much you piss off your customers by allowing people to beat them just by buying BFGs when you've got a pea shooter. There is challenges there. Weapons and power-ups are about progress, advancing, their status in a very male sense. Wearables and power-ups, I'm going to get in deep trouble from people in the audience now. You're generalising over gender splits here, but I'm going to. Wearables and virtual gifts, I would put a lot of money that basically the only recipients of virtual gifts in games are basically women. Men and women buy virtual gifts, but the recipients are pretty well all women. I have no statistics to back that up, so I'm going to get told off by a bunch of people later. It runs really, really deep, this need for status. This story is about a bowerbird, but it comes from when I was an investment banker, as Sean said, and when I first went on the graduate trainee programme, we all had to stand up and do a 5-minute presentation on kind of anything. And this guy who just finished a biology degree gave a 5-minute talk on why I got laid more often when I had a broken leg. And he used the bowerbird as the heart of this example. The bowerbird's quite a small bird. You can't see it here. It's a satin bowerbird. It's blue, which is quite an unusual colour in nature. And it spends a lot of time building a big nest. It's very wide, it's very high, it's very impressive structure. It finds lots of blue things to match its colour, which are difficult to do, although easier now we've invented plastic pegs. And Bic biro lids, apparently they're very big as well. And it sits there and it cools, and then the female comes along and inspects it. And if she likes it, she just sits down and settles in. And biologists have gone, so what is the point of building this thing? It's not particular. It's decorative. It's not like protective against the elements. It's on the ground. It's not defensive. What's the point? And the theory, the conclusion is that basically, look at how much surplus energy I've got. Look how I can bother to do all of this stuff simply to impress you. Now imagine we've got kids, chicks, whatever. Just see how great I'll be at looking after the family if I can do this. We don't need it. And that is the heart of why people buy Ferraris and Rolexes and Prada handbags and all that kind of stuff. It's about showing how much surplus energy you have. It's a very deep, basic level. I'm sure there are many evolutionary biologists in the room who would take deep, deep issue with this very simple analysis.